Welcome back to Whispers of Mystery, where true horror and hidden history come alive. If you love dark stories, chilling mysteries, and tales that make you question what's real, then don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon, because I spend hours digging through old archives and forgotten corners. Tonight's story takes us to the quiet countryside of North Yorkshire, where one happy family discovered that some houses, in the outskirts of Whitby, a coastal town known for its Gothic ruins and misty cliffs, the Harrington family lived a peaceful life. David Harrington, a local history teacher, his wife Eleanor, and their two children, Sophie, who was 17 years old, and Jamie, who was 9 years old, had recently moved into a cosy stone cottage surrounded by rolling green fields. Just beyond their backyard, past a rusted iron gate, stood an abandoned manor, known by locals as Ravenscroft House. No one dared to go near it. The villagers said it had been cursed since 1938, when its owner, Lord Edwin Ravenscroft, disappeared after midnight screams were heard from within. Sophie, curious and thoughtful, often gazed at the manor from her window. Its cracked windows and ivy-covered walls seemed almost alive, watching her as she watched it. One misty evening, as wind howled across the moors, Sophie heard a whisper drift through her half-open window. A soft, breathy voice said, "Come out and see me." And something inside her couldn't resist. The next evening, Sophie slipped out quietly while her parents watched television. She crossed the damp grass, climbed the old iron gate, and stepped into the overgrown path leading toward Ravenscroft House. The air was colder there, unnaturally still. Inside, dust hung in the air like fog. The wallpaper was peeling, and in the dim corridor stood a tall Victorian mirror coated in grime. When Sophie looked into it, her reflection blinked a second too late. Her pulse quickened. Then words began to appear in the dust on the mirror's glass, written backwards. "You found me, Sophie." A cold breath touched her neck. She spun around, but the hallway was empty. A faint laugh echoed from the staircase above. When Sophie returned home later that night, she was pale and shaking. Her mother asked what was wrong, but Sophie only whispered, "Someone was waiting for me." From that night on, the Harrington home began to change. Lights flickered, footsteps echoed in the attic, and Jamie swore he saw another Sophie standing in his doorway at night. Something had followed her home. Over the next few days, Sophie's behaviour grew stranger. She spoke to empty corners of the room and smiled at nothing. Sometimes, in the middle of the night, she was found barefoot in the garden, staring toward Ravenscroft House in the darkness. David found scraps of old parchment under her bed, covered in drawings of strange symbols, and the phrase, "She wants her house back." When he tried to question her, Sophie's voice deepened, not her own, as she said, "You brought me home, Father." The lights flickered violently, and the air turned icy cold. The family's dog barked in terror, then hid beneath the sofa, whimpering. Eleanor called a local vicar to bless their home, but as he began to pray, every candle went out at once. He stumbled backward and whispered in horror, "There's something ancient here, something bound to that house." That night, Sophie laughed in her sleep, a laugh that belonged to two voices. The haunting worsened. Doors slammed on their own, and every clock in the cottage stopped at 3 each night. Eleanor often woke to hear whispers at her ear saying her name over and over. Jamie refused to sleep in his room. He drew pictures of a tall woman in a black Victorian dress, her face stitched and her eyes missing. When Eleanor asked who it was, he said softly, "She says she's Sophie's friend." David tried burning the strange diary pages, but as soon as the fire touched them, a scream echoed through the walls, a sound so human it made them all freeze. That evening, Sophie disappeared from her bed. They found her at dawn, asleep on the steps of Ravenscroft House, her bare feet muddy, her lips smiling faintly. the family began to realise they weren't alone anymore. When morning came, the storm had passed, but the air around Ravenscroft House felt heavy, thick, like the world itself was holding its breath. A neighbour noticed smoke drifting from the Harringtons' cottage. When police arrived, they found the front door wide open and silence. The kitchen was untouched, breakfast half set on the table. Upstairs, the walls were scorched black, as if burned from the inside. And in Sophie's room, there was a message carved deep into the wood: "We're home now." They found David in the hallway, eyes wide open, mouth frozen in a silent scream. Eleanor lay by the stairs, clutching a crucifix so tightly it had cut into her hand, and Jamie, the youngest, was found in the garden, his body facing the manor, as if he'd been trying to run back to it. But Sophie, she wasn't there. Inside Ravenscroft House, one of the officers swore he heard someone humming. They followed the sound upstairs to that tall Victorian mirror. The glass, once cracked, was now clean and shining like water. In the reflection, they saw the Harrington family standing together, David's arm around Eleanor, Jamie holding Sophie's hand, all of them smiling, unnaturally still. And then, Sophie turned in the reflection. She looked directly at the officers behind her, even though she shouldn't have been able to. Her lips moved. The mirror fogged, and in clear, cold letters the words appeared, "It's your turn now." The mirror shattered, slicing one of the officers across the face. When the others ran outside, they swore they heard the same humming echo through the fog. To this day, Ravenscroft House remains sealed. Locals say every few months lights flicker in the windows, and if you look closely, you can see a family sitting together by the fire, their faces pale and smiling, waiting for someone else to join them. This was Whispers of Mystery, where every story leaves a shadow behind. If you want more dark British hauntings and true chilling mysteries, don't forget to subscribe. And remember, some houses never forget their guests.